The Amazon rainforest plays a critical role in regulating the global climate, storing billions of tons of carbon and helping stabilize weather systems around the world. But beneath the surface of its rivers, one of its most important guardians is disappearing. The pink river dolphin is a species of toothed whale endemic to South America. It's also an apex predator, sometimes called the jaguar of the river. And if the pink river dolphin suffers, so do the ecosystems that surround it. That's where Dr. Fernando Trujillo, a marine biologist and one of the world's leading experts on pink river dolphins, comes in. I interviewed him back in October 2024, the year he became Rolex National Geographic Explorer of the Year. Today, we get to listen to that fascinating interview again, where Fernando tells me what the single most important thing in the world is and the time that Jacques Cousteau gave him career advice. Afterward, a 2026 update from Fernando, who I spoke to recently to ask if the species is still under threat. I'm Alex Honnold, professional rock climber and founder of the Honnold Foundation, bringing you stories of inspiring people who are helping to solve today's most pressing conservation issues. In partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, this is Planet Visionaries. Hi, Fernando.
Hi, Alex. Thank you very much to have me today. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Well, let's just dive into it. Tell me your name and where you're from and what you do.
I'm Fernando Trujillo. I am the scientific director of Omasha Foundation. I'm based in Colombia, in Bogota. I'm doing a lot of research and conservation efforts for the Amazon, the Orinoco, and the Caribbean.
Can you tell me about the Orinoco River? It goes through the northern part of South America, right?
Yes. I started to know about the Orinoco River when I was just a child. I remember every morning going to the river to swim, and we needed to throw pebbles to put away the piranhas or to, with a stick, going into the water to chase away the stingrays.
I mean, it's one of the largest rivers in the world, but, when I hear a river, I think of like the river that goes through my hometown.
Well,
but that's not a very big river, that's like a really, really small river.
The Orinoco is the third river in size in the world. The first one is the Amazon, the second one is the Mississippi, and the third one will be the Orinoco and the Congo River in Africa. So they are the giant rivers of the planet.
Yeah, so it would be a fair visualization for people to imagine dolphins swimming up the Mississippi,
yes,
in terms of like the size of the river.
But if you don't have in the Mississippi the amount of vegetation, trees that the Amazon have. And you have like toucans, tropical birds, and you have jaguars, and also you have dolphins in the water. Can you imagine this combination of things? Tropical birds, jaguars, tapirs, and dolphins in the water.
That's quite a range of species. So what inspired your interest in aquatic ecosystems?
I always felt an attraction for water, and I was just starting my university. I was doing marine biology. I had the opportunity to attend a lecture for Jacques Cousteau, and Jacques Cousteau was in his way to the Amazon for exploration. And I did a couple of questions in French to him, and he said to me, dolphins. Nobody are doing studies in the Amazon.
And why dolphins? I mean, besides Jacques Cousteau telling you should work on dolphins, but why were you interested?
I was very interested in big top aquatic predators like sharks, whales, and dolphins. And I was just looking how to study some of these animals.
And can you describe why apex predators are so important to their respective ecosystems? Because I think that a lot of humans have a human-centric approach where it's like, oh, well, that animal is a predator, it's bad, we should kill it. But then that destabilizes the whole ecosystem. Like, help me understand that.
If you ask the people on the streets, what is the most important thing happening in the planet? Probably they will say that the price of the dollar is going up or going down. But basically, the most important is photosynthesis and pollination. Without these two things, we were not alive. No oxygen, no air to breathe, and no food in our houses. Nature, we know, as a result of all the interactions between animals. So it's very important to understand this. If we remove the top predators, we lost animals, all these mechanisms are going to be lost.
In 1993, Fernando founded the Omasha Foundation to help study and conserve the ecosystem of the river dolphins and other aquatic animals that are so important to maintaining the health of the Amazon. So what is the Omasha Foundation?
Well, Omacha Foundation is a small NGO here in Colombia. I created 31 years ago. When I just started to work with river dolphins, the indigenous started to call me Omacha. And I was thinking, no, I'm Fernando. I'm not Omacha. And all the people in the canoes just going in front of me, hi, Omacha. I say, no, Fernando. So one day I asked them, what is Omacha means? And they finally say that they believe that I was a dolphin, became into humans to protect the dolphins. And that is Omacha. Omacha is the dolphins that became to humans to protect them. So that was an honor from the indigenous people.
And that's the beginning of the Omacha Foundation because it protects the dolphins?
Yes, I started Omacha probably 6 years later. For me, Omacha was a kind of metaphor to put ourselves in the skin of a species or an environment to do something from the inside. I realized that there were some efforts to conserve terrestrial habitats, but not aquatic ones. So I was looking at the urgency to protect oceans, rivers, wetlands, and we decided to create Omacha focused on aquatic ecosystems and aquatic species.
Yeah, so help me understand the role of dolphins in the aquatic ecosystem. Can you describe river dolphins? Do they act the same as the dolphins that we think of in the ocean?
Basically, the dolphins are the jaguars of the water. They are the top predators in the Amazon. They are everywhere. We have two different species in the Amazon. Well, the pink river dolphins, that is the largest river dolphins in the planet, is almost 2.8 meters length. And the other species is the tucuxi, the gray dolphin. One of the smaller dolphins in the planet is just 1.50 meters long.
So the pink river dolphins are basically the same size as what we imagine a dolphin to be if you think of one in the ocean. So that's a pretty big animal if you see it cruising in a river.
Absolutely. And the pink dolphins have been in the Amazon for almost 2 million years. So they are very well adapted to this environment. The water is very dark. So these animals have to adapt very well to locate the fish, to avoid the nets, everything, because they have a long snouts and the eyes are very small, but they can see underwater and they produce a lot of sounds, echolocations to move in these murky waters of the river. Basically, they are very good explorers. They can travel 500,000 kilometers along the rivers, looking for opportunities for mate, and they go to more complex areas like the main rivers or the confluence of the rivers where there are more food, but they interact, for example, with other animals. Dolphins play with electric fish.
Like it sounds dangerous.
Yes, they start to play again with electric fish, and at the end they eat the electric fish.
Like first they play with it, they get shocked a few times, and then eventually they eat it. Yeah. It's just playing with their food, huh?
Absolutely.
That's really funny.
So they are fantastic animals, and they are very valuable also for the indigenous communities. The dolphins are sacred animals. The indigenous believe that dolphins have underwater cities where they live like us. So this is a very strong and powerful combination of the scientific value of the dolphins, but also the cultural value.
And what were you studying specifically when you started working with the dolphins?
Well, the first thing we wanted to know how was doing the dolphins in the rivers. So the first thing we wanted to do is to count dolphins, and that is very difficult. I remember 30 years ago, we were 3 guys just counting dolphins on the shore, and I used to count like, 100 dolphins every day, and the indigenous just laugh about us. I asked them, why you are laughing? And they say to me, you are counting the same dolphins several times. I say, no possible. And yes, we were counting the dolphins several times. So now we have a protocol. And the other thing is we cannot protect the whole river. So we needed to start to do satellite tagging with dolphins. With a small tags, we put in the dorsal fin of the dolphins. And now we track dolphins and we know what are the most important areas.
Can you talk about the threats that river dolphins face? Like, what are the challenges for river dolphins?
South America, we have problems with deforestation, with mercury pollution. Now we are doing, for example, the mercury sampling on dolphins, and we found a very high levels of mercury on dolphins. So we started to evaluate fish that people are eating, and there are so many fish with very high numbers of mercury. And a couple of years ago, we did a report with the Washington Post in the Amazon, and the journalist asked me about my level of mercury. So I did the test for mercury, and the highest value you can have in your body is 1 milligram per kilogram. And I had 36.4 milligram per kilogram, 36 times over the highest level.
Where'd the mercury come from?
Basically from illegal gold mining. And also, there are natural mercury in the ground of the Amazon. But because the deforestation, the ground is exposed to the rain, and all this mercury goes into the water and goes into the food chain. So I was worried, not only about my health, but also about the people, the local people, the indigenous. I'm not living in a permanent way in the Amazon. So could you imagine how is the situation for the indigenous people?
Yeah. What did you do about your mercury levels? Are you okay?
Yes. No, I'm fine. I started to work with a toxicologist. I stopped to eat fish in the Amazon, and I'm taking selenium pills to try to trap the mercury. So I'm in my way to reduce the amount of mercury.
And what do you think that means for indigenous people that live in the Amazon? I mean, has anybody done any research as to how they're affected?
The curious thing is that there are a lot of symptoms in people, and now in Brazil and in other countries, where they always say that they have a lot of headaches and also malformations in children. So we will have a real problem some years if we don't take decisions now to avoid the poison of people with mercury.
Yeah.
So this is an alert, and we need to do something to try to tackle this huge problem. When I started to work with these animals, I realized that dolphins are a good ambassadors of the conservation of the rivers. People are very empathic with the dolphins. So at the end, it's a very powerful figure and species to try to encourage people, governments, to do something to make a difference for aquatic resources.
Over the past 2 years, Fernando and his team have taken part in the Rolex and National Geographic Perpetual Planet Amazon expedition. Their work has brought awareness to the challenges facing the dolphins and engaged local communities to tackle complex conservation issues. How did the local communities react to your work? Like, what do they think about all this research and conservation work being done in the Amazon?
Well, in my case, it's has been a long process. I have been there for 37 years. So at first, they thought this is a crazy guy. Why they are studying the dolphins if the dolphins already are there? But with the time, they started to realize they need to understand, for example, how many fish they can take from a lake. So just 1 month ago, we inaugurated our new Amazon Conservation Center in the Amazon. And the first thing we did was training course for indigenous for biodiversity monitoring. They are protecting the dolphins, and they are understanding that they can earn more money taking tourists to watch the dolphins instead to spend hours and hours in the rivers trying to fish with no success. So now we have a network of young people, indigenous, collecting information about different species and trying to consolidate this knowledge, not only the scientific knowledge, but the cultural one. So we are working with local people from Brazil to Colombia to Peru to Ecuador in order they can talk between them. Not only scientists, but local people. We need to work together, trying to put in place solutions and to share information.
Yeah, so you're talking about the importance of transboundary cooperation. Can you tell me all the countries that the Orinoco River flows through?
Yes.
And I ask this because something like the Mississippi, one of the biggest rivers in the world, just goes through a bunch of states, but it's only one country.
Well, in the Orinoco, we have two countries, that is Venezuela and Colombia. But in the Amazon, you have 9 countries. So it started in Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia, also Venezuela, Suriname, Guyana. So all in total 9 countries.
So when we talk about protecting the Amazon River, what we need are 9 different countries to cooperate on something.
Absolutely.
So is this one of the core reasons why it's so difficult to protect the Amazon?
Yes, but not only is the 9 countries, it also is all the countries in the planet, because the wood for the trees in the Amazon go to European markets. The soy that is produced in Brazil is going to America, China, and European market. The beef from the Amazon goes to China and other countries. So it's an international concern. And also, we can show, for example, with the dolphins, how we can scale the solutions.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So last year, in August, there were a meeting, the Summit of Belém, where presidents from different countries were together to discuss how they can save the Amazon. And one of these actions was the conservation management plan for river dolphins, because governments recognized that this is a very good example of transboundary cooperation. We had a conservation management plan with 4 governments, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. I'm the coordinator of this initiative. And the last year in October, the Ministry of the Environment in Colombia invited 14 countries in the world, in Asia and South America, where there are river dolphins, to make a global declaration for the conservation of the dolphins.
That's crazy. What are the big rivers in Asia with river dolphins?
The Ganges River in India, the Indus in Pakistan, the Meghna in Bangladesh, and the Brahmaputra,
Wow.
and also the Yangtze in China.
I mean, I think of some of those as the most polluted waterways on Earth, because of the heavy industrialization, like just so many people living in close proximity to the rivers.
Absolutely. Just to give you another number, in the rivers in Asia and in South America, where river dolphins live, there are 1.6 billion of people. The 20% of the whole population of the planet live in rivers where there are river dolphins. We cannot see the problems of each country in an isolated way or each river basin. We need to work together. So I think the learnings from this Perpetual Planet Amazon expedition are a lot. And we put the Amazon in the international level, in the public policies, and it will make a change, definitely.
You were just awarded National Geographic Explorer of the Year. Where were you when you found out?
Well, I was here in my office and I received a call. He said to me, "You are the Explorer of the Year. So congratulations." I just were thinking, oh, it was maybe a dream. I never expect that. I still remember when I was a child and going to find the magazines dreaming about these remote areas. It's the first time a Latin American person has this recognition. It's honor me, this recognition, but at the same time, open a lot of doors at the international level. You are going to have a different audience. You can talk with a minister, with a president, with a senator about the problems in the Amazon. In some way, you scale your work from some people knowing what we were doing in the Amazon to many people knowing and being interested in what is happening in this remote area.
Despite the challenges of coordinating conservation efforts across borders, Fernando has had a lot of magical moments working with the dolphins over the years. Those moments have helped keep his passion for the Amazon alive. You've been doing this work for more than 30 years. What have you seen change? And I don't know, how have you stayed passionate about this for so long?
I used to say that I'm optimist in 51%, just to keep me in the work. I think a lot of things have changed and very fast in 3 decades. We are losing biodiversity. The rivers are changing. We have more human people living in the Amazon. There are large emerging cities like Manaus with 4 million of people in the Amazon, or Belém de Pará with 2 million of people. But we need to keep the hope. We need to take these good examples of work with local communities, with indigenous communities, and try to scale this for the whole Amazon. There are people that really want to make difference. There are other indigenous that say, okay, we want to save our fisheries. So all these small stories connected give me hope to try to keep going the work.
Yeah, so despite the big challenges that the ecosystem in the Amazon faces, you find your optimism from the actions of individuals, like key people who are trying really hard to do something positive in the world. What advice would you give to somebody who's interested in doing the kind of work that you do?
I think the passion is very important. And I can see sometimes young people are losing very easily the passion. The passion is the engine. I have seen thousands of times dolphins, but every time I'm pedaling in a canoe in the flooded forest, and suddenly I have dolphins in the middle of the trees, just breathing and doing a very strong noise.
And when you say swimming amongst the trees, you mean when the trees are flooded, and so you mean literally between trees?
Yes, I'm in the middle of the flooded forest in a canoe, and suddenly you have dolphins around. I start to smell the smell of the breath of the dolphins. It's like a fishing smell.
Like a fishy smell?
Yes, it's disgusting, but at the same time, it's very nice because it's a way to be connected with the dolphins.
Disgusting, but also magical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Also, when I am swimming in the river and the dolphins approach and start to push me, just playing, that's a magical moment. A couple of years ago, I remember I was in a lagoon. I used to have a bandana in my head, and that was the lucky one with dolphins. And I was in the water interacting with the dolphins, and I dived in and I lost my bandana. And I was very, very sad for this. But after 3 or 5 minutes, I just feel someone was pushing me and was a dolphin with the flipper and with my bandana. So it was very crazy. 7 people were around saying, no way, that's unbelievable. So there are so many magical moments around all these expeditions and work with dolphins in the Amazon.
And what do you hope to see from the next generation of conservationists working in the same field? Like, what do you think are the obvious next steps in river conservation in the Amazon?
Well, we need to try to monitor in a better way all the factors that are threatening the Amazon. For example, to monitor the mercury in different areas, not only in the water, in the fish, in the people, and taking decisions about that. We need to work a lot about how we can recover the fisheries for the people that are living there. There are 45 millions of people, so where they are eating, mainly fish. But if the river is collapsing, it will be very difficult. So I think there are a lot of things to do for the next generations.
So more generally, what advice would you give the average person as to how they could keep the planet perpetual?
Well,
like not just specific to the health of the Amazon, but what do you think anybody should be doing to help keep the planet perpetual?
Be more conscious. It is very simple. I try to keep my carbon track low. I'm planting trees all the time. I try to use the bicycle, things like that. It's very simple things. We used to live in a bubble in the big cities. And this is our planet, this big bubble that is our main city. We need to break down this bubble and know more about our planet and what we need to do. Mm-hmm. And to help other people. Just be more empathetic. If you are more empathetic, it's a very good way to help not only people, society, but also the planet.
That was Fernando back in 2024, talking about his mission to protect the pink river dolphins and why they are essential to the health of the world's largest rivers. I checked in with him again to see what the road ahead looks like for the survival of this species. Here's my recent interview with him. Fernando, welcome back to Planet Visionaries. Thanks so much for taking the time. Are there any specific updates with your work between when we spoke in 2024 and now in 2026?
I think the most important is we didn't know the dolphins have problems with the immunological systems. And the second part is the protocols we are putting in place in all the countries to respond to the climate crisis. And also we have completed another 4 expeditions counting dolphins. And after the last one I did just one day ago, I conclude that basically we know now that the populations of dolphins are declining everywhere. So now we need to focus more in solutions.
So to do the prep for this episode, I listened to our episode from 2024 again, and I was struck by your own levels of mercury. How is your health doing? Because I mean, one of the takeaways from the last episode was that you had very high levels of mercury in your blood.
Thank you for asking, Alex. Yes, I think it's much better. The good news is that for some reason, people think that it is impossible to eliminate the mercury, and now you can do it. And it's a good news, especially for the indigenous communities in the Amazon, where they are being exposed to a very high levels of mercury during the last years.
Yeah, explain that. Why is there mercury contamination in the Amazon?
In order to get the gold, people use for hundreds of years the mercury to isolate the gold.
So tell me a little bit about how that is connected to your work. I mean, you've spent your whole career, your whole life working with river dolphins. Talk a little bit about gold mining in the Amazon, and because those are seemingly unrelated issues in a way, and yet the whole ecosystem kind of comes together. Talk about that.
My work is focused on river dolphins, but the river dolphins are a very good sentinels of the health of the rivers. We started just doing the basic scientific research with dolphins, like how many dolphins are. So we are undertaking long expeditions along the rivers. And so far we have covered more than 90,000 kilometers of rivers in 7 countries. So we are doing evaluations about the threats that the dolphins are facing in the rivers. And the threats that dolphins are facing are the same for people. They are experiencing climate changes like extreme droughts. They are experiencing overfishing. They are experiencing deforestation and mercury pollution. So at the end, we are talking here about One Health. The One Health approach is basically the connection between species, humans, and ecosystems. Everything is very strong connected.
How have you sort of broadened your work to this One Health approach of, looking at the overall health of the entire ecosystem, including its human inhabitants?
5 years ago, we started to capture dolphins to put satellite tracking on them. We wanted to know the most important areas for dolphins to be protected. We are running some swab samples in the dolphins, and we know there are exposure to antibiotics in the rivers.
That sounds crazy, because when you think of the Amazon or the Orinoco or these massive rivers in South America, you never think that they have antibiotics in them. How are these wild animals being exposed to these type of pollutants?
Everything just go into the rivers. And it's happening in the Amazon, and it's happening everywhere in the planet. So these antibiotics and the bad use of the antibiotics are affecting the health of the whole biodiversity and also people. So through the dolphins and this health approach, we are understanding all these problems. And when we are showing all the problems in the rivers through the dolphins,
I don't know, it's just an interesting thing that you're using this sort of charismatic megafauna, like a beautiful pink river dolphin, as sort of a proxy for human populations, because they're both being affected in the same ways by these pollutants.
The lifespan of a dolphin is 50 years. They migrate along the rivers. They move a lot. So they accumulate along their lives a lot of toxins and a lot of diseases. They are so similar to humans. So
yeah.
it is a good proxy to understand what happened.
And maybe it's worth reminding people listening at home, because I think if you're listening to this in sort of suburban America, you don't really realize that in the Amazon and in these communities, all these human communities also live along rivers and are completely focused around the river. They live in boats, they go up and down the rivers. It's primary mode of transport, one of the primary sources of food. And so the comparison to river dolphins seems much more apt in these communities than it might, for me, for example, growing up in suburban California, I didn't really interact with the rivers in quite the same way.
In Asia and in South America, there are 1.6 billion of people living. The 20% of the whole population of the planet share rivers with dolphins. We're talking here about the Yangtze in China, the Ganges in India, the Mekong in Cambodia, the Indus in Pakistan, and the Amazon and the Orinoco in South America. All these people living along the rivers are creating very strong problems for the biodiversity and also for themselves.
And so what do you see as the greatest threats to river dolphins right now?
Overfishing, pollution, deforestation, and climate change. The temperature of the water just reached 106 Fahrenheit degrees.
The temperature of the river reached 106 degrees Fahrenheit?
At first, we thought it was a kind of bacteria killing the dolphins.
That's warmer than a hot tub. And that's just because the outside temperature was so warm that it heated the river that much?
It was a combination of very shallow waters, a lot of sun exposition, and also there were a lot of fires around. So there were a lot of smoke, and there were a lot of deforestation process around these lagoons. So everything just play against the dolphins and the fish. Millions of fish died. So we want to be prepared for this because it's going to happen again. So the Brazilian government already have a protocol to try to create ways to prevent this to happen. We are also training vets that are focused on domestic animals in different areas to focus on dolphins, manatees, and other species.
You're training vets to treat the dolphins?
Yes. Basically, we need everybody to have some kind of knowledge to prevent these massive episodes of animals dying. We are training vets in different countries, in Pakistan, in Brazil, in Colombia. We have the National Marine Mammal Foundation in America and the United States training us or vets in the region and creating a network, a very strong network to try to face these very complicated situations.
Fernando, can you tell me about your role with the Perpetual Planet Amazon expedition?
A program like this is unique because allow several people. We were 100 people working for more than 3 years along the Amazon. And this is a program that is alive. And when we finish Perpetual Planet Amazon expedition, I continue with this strong connection with Rolex and National Geographic, and was the way I got another funding to do all this training with local people and all the strategies to face the climate challenges we have now in the Amazon.
When one of the main pressures is climate change or, illegal mining done across borders between all these different countries. I mean, that's so far removed from how you started your research, many years ago, just counting dolphins and trying to do an inventory of like how many live there and where do they live and what do they do. It's like, how does it feel personally to have the scope of your work increase so much over the years?
Well, it intimidates a lot because, as you say, I started like all the biologists working with a single species, with a romantic approach. We want to save the dolphins. And then we discover that in order to save the dolphins, we need to protect the rivers. And this is a very huge task. And we need to create the ways to do that. And it is not simple. So you need to start to work with other researchers, with governments, with indigenous communities. And in the middle of all these situations, you need to produce hope. You need to show that there are some places in the Amazon where if we combine solutions, we can manage the climate, we can control the overfishing, we can control the deforestation, and in the country, we can restore the forest.
How do you see people who are interested in your work getting involved? I mean, how can people help support the health of the rivers in the Amazon and species like pink river dolphins?
People are knowing what is the impact of the gold they are buying, and also people need to ask themselves where the fish they are eating come from, or the timber for the furniture are coming. So people need to be more aware of that. We are in the same boat. It's the same planet. Despite the fact that people in London or in New York think that Amazon is so far away, the climate, the stability of the climate depends on very important areas like the Arctic, the Antarctic, the Amazon, the Congo, for everybody.
Well, Fernando, thank you so much and appreciate the update. Yeah, it's a real pleasure chatting again.
Thank you, Alex.
That was Dr. Fernando Trujillo. Huge thanks for joining me. We'll put links to Fernando's work in the production notes. Planet Visionaries is a podcast in partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative and a Sony Music podcast production.